Let's take a look at our grid, how they line up then. Seb Hopkins, I wonder how his GCSEs went. Well, his weekend's going swimmingly well so far. Winner yesterday from Freddie Tomlinson in the brand new build Ginetta G56. David Freschi completed the podium in the first of 3 Bagheera Racing entered Mercedes AMG GT4s with Alia Kolic, teammate beside on the grid. David Foster and Danny Henry in their McLarens will start in 5th and 6th as they did yesterday, and behind them Craig Wilkins and Greg Evans in the Toyota GR Supra and the Ginetta G55. So Aston Martins and Porsches behind them. Stephen Walton in the yellow and black Mercedes AMG will be a man to watch. Didn't have the luck that he could match to the speed yesterday. Peter Daly starting in 12th place, the race director of the British GT Championship, in which a number of these cars and drivers regularly race. Don't think we're going to get the Cayman Club Sport of Keith Freezer out here. Richard Taffender, Chris Murphy and Martin Addison will be out in their GT4 Aston Martins. It's not a Mercedes Vantage, Martin, you idiot. Well, there are the Aston Martins. They have their own mini category here to battle with. And as Ed pointed out, these GT4 cars are still homologation legal for racing in GT4. GT4 created as a subset of the GT3 category that has been so successful over the last, 20 years now. And it is a great closer to production basis for GT racing manufacturers. The GT3s tend to be much more advanced and much more developed, so it's cost effective, it is relatively straightforward to get into, and it is perfect for teams, engineers and drivers to cut their teeth, to develop their skills as they eye up a move up the ladder into GT3. And of course GT3, as well as being a worldwide category, will also be the official category for Le Mans Series racing as of next year. GTE will be gone and GT3 will bring in even more opportunity for fans of different brands to see cars racing in the World Endurance Championship, Le Mans, and a whole host of other major international races. Lights off on the safety car. We're about to go racing for 30 minutes around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Will our race 1 winner, Seb Hopkins on pole, do it again? Getting the race underway for the second time this weekend, the Masters GT4 Classic Silverstone Challenge. Teenager Seb Hopkins on pole position, the winner of the first race, takes the lead into turn 1. Freddie Tomlinson has the lead though, because overcommitting Seb Hopkins found that the tyres and the brakes were not quite as warm as he had hoped after their brief warm-up lap. So Freddie Tomlinson in a brand new Ginetta G56 GT4 car built up by the Ginetta factory specifically for this race. He has the lead. David Freschi and Alia Kolic in their Mercedes AMGs, 3rd and 4th off the grid. They are still in 3rd and 4th positions, but coming under pressure from behind from the first of the McLarens, and that is the grey car 111 of David Foster. Danny Henry behind him in the white car with the wild boar on the side, runs out wide and there's contact with the number 29 car Alia Kolic. Does not manage to hang on, and through goes the McLaren of David Foster. So right away, Alistair Douglas, from the start of this race, it looks like classic GT4 racing, whether it's in the British Championship, across Europe, wherever on the world. These cars are made for elbows out aggression.
Definitely, yes, and GT4 racing doesn't always take place on the tarmac. There's quite a bit of off-track incidents, but hopefully not too many in this race. But there, the Alia Kolic Mercedes just taking to the grass through Luffield, on the approach to Luffield, but no harm done hopefully to the McLaren of David Foster, who's having a really good battle with him So we're looking now up the Hanger Straight, and it's young Freddie Tomlinson, son of Lawrence Tomlinson, who now owns the Ginetta brand as part of his LNT group, and Freddie leading the other teenager in the race, Seb Hopkins, who both of these drivers are racing in British GT4 this year. Seb Hopkins is in the car that he uses in GT4, but behind them there's a great battle going on, and it's the number 111, the grey McLaren 570S of David Foster. Runs a little bit wide coming through Club Corner, being really heavily challenged by Alia Koloc in the Mercedes AMG GT4 car, another car, both of these cars running in British GT this year in the current championship. And then just behind them is the second of the McLarens, and that is behind Koloc, that's Danny Henry, and then it's Craig Wilkins in another of the, as far as I can work out from looking at the car, another of the current GT4 cars racing this year, and that's the Toyota Supra, the GR, the Gazoo Racing car that races in GT4 this year in British GT. So we have current cars up at the front, and then we've got some classics and some cup cars in the race as well, and a challenge into Brooklands from the McLaren, but it doesn't work. He has to back out of that one. So that's the McLaren of Danny Henry, who wasn't able to get past Koloc.
Yeah, Koloc in the middle of a McLaren sandwich there. McLaren Mercedes, familiar partners over the years. Oh, the GR Racing Toyota goes out very wide indeed. Craig Wilkins will have lots of gravel on his sticky tyres now, and that's going to make grip a little hard to find. Is that smoke coming from the back of the second of the McLarens of Danny Henry? Looks like it. Now, he's not smoking now, but looked like maybe he was running over a little bit of quick dry from some oil down earlier. There is quite a lot of oil down earlier. Oh no! Danny Henry with a big moment, and maybe that was his own oil, because that was not the way that cars go from Maggots into Beckett's, and that, I'm afraid, is going to bring out the safety car. That car is going to be a while before it's moved. When you go off there, that is pretty much as far from safety as you can get. And so now, here's the move down the inside from the Mercedes. Alia Koloc trying to go by, and hanging on the outside, David Foster. David Foster just clinging on in the McLaren. I'm surprised we haven't seen the safety car boards already. If we get away without a safety car, I'd be very surprised indeed. So it is our race leader, Freddie Tomlinson, ahead of Seb Hopkins. This is the battle for fourth. David Freschke, who finished on the podium in third yesterday in a similar Mercedes, is away and gone. Here's the battle for fourth. McLaren versus Mercedes, and trying to close in from behind, Craig Wilkins in the GR Racing Toyota. And another car in trouble. That's one of our Astons.
It's the
Richard Taffender, I think, is it?
Yes, it is. The Stratton Motorsport car, yes.
Oh dear. Okay, so yeah, front left is very much not as nature intended. So this 30-minute race, we're 5 minutes in, and already we've got two cars stranded, one with a mechanical issue and the other one with a fairly significant off. Here's the race lead though, Freddie Tomlinson, and the orange and black car behind the white Ginetta is Seb Hopkins, two young aspiring drivers. Seb Hopkins already, very successful season so far in that Porsche, and maybe Freddie Hopkins is in a car that he will be racing for the rest of the British GT season in GT4. This is a brand new G56 Ginetta, upgrades to the standard G55 car.
And we've got double-waved yellow flags you briefly saw in the background there. That might mean that the clerk of the course is happy to leave this race running under a local yellow, because you did say when you were describing the incident that that car is a very, very long way off the track on the in the gravel trap to the left of Beckett's.
Yeah.
And they may feel that that's far enough off for it to be safe to run under a local yellow.
It wasn't far enough off that he couldn't get there, and so somebody else losing control or making contact in Maggots and Bessick, and there are marshals there. We have had safety cars for cars that were much less of an obstruction, I think. But yeah, no, never try and second guess what happens in race control. So we do not have a safety car yet. The other car, the Aston, is a long way off. And actually that went off a long way. Look, you can see the tyre mark. So actually the damage to the left front corner may have been caused, may have been effect. He may actually have gone into the wall there, but whatever, the Aston is a long way off.
And I think the incident with the McLaren, we saw that smoke, and what that was, we don't know. But clearly there was something wrong with the car, and unfortunately, Danny Henry didn't know that. And I think the incident was caused by that same failure.
I'm now beginning to think that might have been a monster lockup as he was coming down into Copse, because it really didn't look like he slowed down very much coming into the Beckett's S's, did it?
It didn't at all, which is why I wonder whether there was some fault with the car that caught him out. And anyway, the main thing is he's perfectly okay climbing out of the car. That's really good news. Well,
this is him sweeping into the left-hander at Maggots. Lots of smoke from the back, and the car just does not want to stop, does it? Goes straight off. So has he gone off on his own fluid? Did it blow a pipe? Front-mounted cooling, so the water and oil radiators will all have been at the front, and whether it was coolant or oil, so either way, and it might well have been that's what was caused the cloud of smoke coming down into Copse a few seconds earlier. Well, the driver is out okay, and that is the only concern really. So he's out, Marshall's back behind the wall, and clearly the race director considers the car to be not a worry. And although the driver's out there from the Aston, I was going to say, the Marshalls are poised right there, as if they're not ignoring it, they are ready to do something with the car.
And there it is, the safety car boards have now come out. So the clerk of the course has decided that either one or both incidents require attention.
Yeah. Often, as with penalties, there can be a totting up system. One you can deal with. Once the shopping list, the to-do list starts to get a bit long, you go, okay, right, now we have to go safety car. So here we go, safety car, and that means for the moment, no overtaking. Cars will run round at reduced speed until they catch the safety car. We saw it had left the pit lane. There it is in front of Freddie Tomlinson and Seb Hopkins. That's our 1-2, and David Freschi, factory Bagheera driver, in third place. He will close up as well. So there have been no pit stops, they have lapped nobody, so the order in which they catch the safety car should be the order in which they actually are in the race. There's the top three. Alia Koloc comes into sight behind in the second of the Mercedes-AMG GT4s. Two of the three cars run by Bagheera Racing. Let's just document, by the way, what has happened to Stephen Walton, car number 69. He is up to 5th place from 9th on the grid, and that is the bright black and yellow Mercedes. And there is the 5th place car of David Foster. So Walton up to 8th place. Sorry, I can't read the timing screen, never mind my own writing. There's Walton, car number 69. So 9th on the grid, 8th place. He was running pretty competitively yesterday and then had an issue, dropped back down the order. Choice of Craig Wilkins is in 6th. In 7th place is John Dixon, and that is the, I can't think of a word other than lurid green Lotus Evora, because boy, it is a bright colour. If I turned up at home with that car, my wife would definitely be looking out the window going, are you kidding? What have you bought a car that colour for? But I think it's well, certainly on a racing car, makes life very easy for commentators. It's the really, really, really green one. Well, rescuing then two cars, the Aston Martin, you can see, car number 172. Chris Murphy sort of misidentified that one, thought it was the Chris Griffin green and lime grey one actually, rather than Chris Murphy's car. And the other car is the one that had a more high speed off. It was a probably pretty worrying moment for Danny Henry. When you come out of Copse Corner, foot hard on the gas, you do not lift at any stage into Maggots in anything. You just sweep through Maggots as it doesn't exist, and then you get onto the brakes for the first part of the Beckett's S's. And if there aren't any brakes, there is no first part of the Beckett's S's. As you saw, you take off over the curb on the outside, and he flew pretty much across the grass and any gravel trap into the wall. So there is the Stratton Motorsport Aston. Oh, so in fact, is that Richard Taffinder's car? No, it's not. There are two. Oh, so Chris Murphy's is being run by Stratton as well. I didn't realise that. I didn't have that noted. So it's another Stratton Motorsport car, because Chris Murphy's car is the car that is shown as stopped. So safety car will remain out. This car will have a little tow down to terra firma. And there is the gap in the fence. So towed forward, and then he will be dragged back in, I'm assuming. Meanwhile, the McLaren ain't going anywhere as a rolling chassis. It is on the flatbed. And I'm not sure what driver Danny Henry found when he went from Beckett's to from Maggott to try and turn into Beckett's. It did rather look like he went for the middle pedal and there was nothing at home. So safety car is out, and our remaining dozen plus cars filing along in single file behind him. Another lap or so. Luckily it was relatively early in the race, and so the really good news is that both of our drivers are A-OK. Danny Henry, I think, possibly with a bit more of a shock there. So he gets into the truck. And the Aston Martin, we had to have a repositioning of the towing vehicle, being towed back in behind the wall to a place of safety. So that will be safely out of the way. So that one is done. We need now for the flatbed to find a gap to go into. It's not always quite as quick, but these guys very well rehearsed. They know exactly where they're going, what they're doing, and that will have been confirmed to them by race control. So the marshals have done their job, rescued the car, rescued the driver. Both occupants are A-OK, and in the end, that's actually all you ask from any racing incident. Machines can be replaced, human beings considerably less so. So both drivers fine and on their way back to consider what has not been a great race for either of them. And that McLaren is looking just a little bit second-hand, isn't it? No real obvious signs externally of why he went off.
That kind of fluid or smoke that we saw coming out from the front right corner of the car would suggest, you mentioned the cooling system. It could be oil or could be water being cooled by a radiator there. Maybe that was damaged in an earlier incident. Just a touch on another car would have caused that perhaps, and we just didn't see that, and Danny Henry wasn't aware of it. And when he touched, I did look for that front right wheel locking, because that's what would have sent him off if he was on his own oil or water, but actually the wheel was still rotating, so a little bit unexplained, that one.
Yeah, maybe what was leaking actually was brake fluid from the caliper, from the brake line. Again, as he went down into copse, there was a big puff of smoke, and that could be brake fluid on a hot disc. Safety car lights are off. We are about to go green. Oh, and there's something, some quick dry down in the pit in, made it look like the safety car having a monster lockup. He was just driving over the quick dry that covers somebody else's oiling. So we are ready to go back to green flag racing with just under 14 minutes remaining here at Silverstone. weaving to get a little bit of heat back into the tyres, approaching the final corner on the lap, and we are about to go green. Freddie Tomlinson drops the hammer, and away we go back to green flag racing for the second part of this Masters GT4 Silverstone Challenge. And Freddie Tomlinson leads from Seb Hopkins. They were the 1-2 before our brief safety car period to recover a couple of machines. The McLaren of Danny Henry and the broken down Aston Martin of Chris Murphy. Well, Freddie Tomlinson got the drop at the start on Seb Hopkins, and this is a brand new car, an absolutely brand new Ginetta G56. So Alistair, I wonder whether they just had a couple of issues with the car yesterday that they've been able to address during the day today, because they raced yesterday evening. They've had plenty of time to work on the car, maybe make a little bit of a setup change, because it does look much more like he's got the pace to handle the Porsche than seemed the case yesterday.
Yes, I think it's more to do with the fact that Freddie was able to get ahead of Seb at the start of the race, and they are so close in terms of their lap times. Yesterday's best lap times were only Freddie slightly slower, but only by 0.3 of a second on a full Silverstone lap, taking nearly 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So I wonder whether it's just the case that Fred is ahead, and now Seb hasn't quite got the pace to find a way through. They're both experienced drivers, as I mentioned earlier in the race, both teenagers, but both experienced at driving in GT4 in British GT this year. Seb's best result, sharing with Jamie Orton for the whole season in this car. Their best result, a second in GT4 at the last round of the British GT Championship, which actually is the one flyaway round at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. So Seb is really coming on strong, and he's coming on strong to Freddie as well. And Freddie, a mistake from Freddie there, a little bit late on the brakes, and is Seb going to be able to get through? No, Freddie manages to recover that, but Seb is much closer. He's going for the outside. Freddie Tomlinson goes for the inside to defend his position, and as long as he doesn't run out wide here, then he's not going to open the door for Seb Hopkins. So a little bit of a worrying moment for Freddie Tomlinson there, made a little bit of a mistake into Stowe Corner, coming up now into the fast right and left at Abbey and Farm, and then the rest of the field streaming through as we go back to Farm now into the braking area for Village. An opportunity for Seb to come up on the inside, but Freddie doesn't give him that opportunity. Brakes nice and late, goes into the left-hander at the loop now. Two very different cars. Freddie Tomlinson's front-engined rear-wheel drive, and Seb Hopkins' rear-engined rear-wheel drive. So quite different characteristics of these two cars.
Good restart from both men. David Fresky went with them, but there's some fairly large gaps down the field, considering everybody was jammed up behind the safety car. And again, Hopkins has a look down the inside, does not manage to get the orange and black Porsche fully alongside Tomlinson, and so the Ginetta driver still has the lead. David Fresky not quite with the pace of these guys in the Bagheera Racing Mercedes. Alia Kolic, his teammate, in fourth place, another second or two back, but behind them a big gap back to David Foster in the McLaren, who's in fifth place. He's got a clump of cars behind him. Craig Wilkins in the Toyota. He's got Dixon's Lotus there as well. And Walton in the black and yellow. Stephen Walton in the black and yellow Mercedes. But it's all eyes on the battle for the lead. Hopkins victorious over Tomlinson yesterday. Can the youngster turn the tables on his fellow teenager? Can Freddie Tomlinson hold on here again? It looks as though perhaps the Ginetta just took a fraction longer to really come back up to full temperature, because now he's just creeping away a little bit from the Porsche. Maybe it's just that he's actually making his speed in the twisty stuff, because the Porsche reels him in down the end of the hangar straight.
Through Stowe Corner, in now downhill into the Vale, and then left into Club, the historic Club, the faster way through Club Corner. So a nice slingshot out onto the tighter right-hander in Club, onto the Hamilton straight. Both drivers running a little wide. Seb Hopkins slightly wider than Freddie Tomlinson, but they're now up into Farm, into Abbey and Farm again, through the left-hander, which I would imagine is flat out for these cars, but then certainly not flat out, hard on the brakes. And it's great to see there's enough suspension movement on these cars that you can see when the drivers put the brakes on and the front of the car dips, and that's really adds something to spectating on these GT4 cars. They're not welded to the ground like some other cars.
Well, the other thing that you get, which is exactly what you want from sports car racing, is different sights, different shapes, and very different, the Ginetta and the Porsche, and different sounds as well. The 6.2-litre engine in the Ginetta bellowing away, 3.8-litre flat six bark from the Porsche. So although they're very close in terms of power and performance, they have a very different way of getting there. There's the Lotus, and John Sixon leading the Cup class cars. Again, that bright green Lotus, a very distinct and easy car to spot in the middle of the pack. He's just behind the GR Supra of Craig Wilkins, who's in 6th position. So our leading Cup car, 2 behind him, behind the black and yellow car of Stephen Walton, behind the Mercedes, is the 2nd place car in the Cup class, and that is the yellow car number 30 of Greg Evans, Ginetta G55, so a slightly older version of the Ginetta concept. It's the G56 that leads at the moment.
Down the hanger straight once again, and you'd expect the drivers to be over on the right-hand side as we look at it, the outside of the circuit, but Freddie Tomlinson was so keen not to let Seb Hopkins go up the inside into Stowe that he stayed right over on the right-hand side. Now they're coming into Club Corner, and they both take a good chunk of curb, perhaps a little different to some of the other cars we've been watching this weekend. These cars will take the curbs, the bashing from the curbs, and more modern suspension systems on them, so they're able to take quite a chunk of curb on the run into Abbey now, and then across to Farm, and still Seb Hopkins hasn't found a way by. The fastest lap of the race has gone to Freddie Tomlinson, a 2:09.223, which is quicker than yesterday's fastest lap set by Seb Hopkins, which was a 2:09.680. So Freddie Tomlinson really showing his pace today.
Stephen Walton in the black and yellow Mercedes, being chased by the white, black and yellow Ginetta. Right behind him, car number 30, that's Greg Evans. Greg's 2nd in the Cup class. Wants to get by the Mercedes so he can try and get to grips with the Lotus in front. 6 minutes remain on the clock. Even if he does get by the Mercedes, the Lotus may just be a little bit too far away. And these cars closer to production cars in terms of their setup than the GT3 cars, which are more pure bed racers, and with ABS and traction control as well to assist the particularly gentleman drivers who tend to start in this category to learn how to handle these cars. And you can see the Ginetta trying to make inroads. Meanwhile, there is another battle, the Toyota behind the McLaren, 2 very different ways of going racing. In fact, in the 5 cars that we've just seen, 5 entirely different concepts of car, all being brought together and racing close under one grouping in GT4. And that's one of the delights of the GT3 and the GT4 formats, is that you can bring all sorts of different shapes and sizes and weights and layouts of cars, and they can all race evenly against each other.
And just a note that we've noticed a warning has gone out to Seb Hopkins, the Porsche in 2nd place. There it is, the orange and black car, for exceeding track limits. And I suspect it's there where we've just watched him go off again, because Club Corner, a favourite place along with Copse Corner for running a little wide. And Seb Hopkins is being warned, so another transgression and he'll start to get time penalties.
Yeah, which won't help because he's behind already. Hopkins with the fastest race lap now, 2:09.126 compared to the 2:09.180 of the race leader on that last lap, Freddie Tomlinson. Don't get any extra points, you don't get prize money, you don't get a funky watch of any kind for setting the fastest lap. You might get a warm glow inside, but that doesn't replace being in front. So he closes a little on the leader, and you can see how quickly they have dropped the Mercedes behind. David Freschi and Alia Collett, they're 3rd and 4th. So this will, at the moment, produce a similar podium to yesterday. Same 3 names, just in a slightly different order, because it was Hopkins, Tomlinson and Freschi yesterday. And right now, Tomlinson looking determined to stay ahead of the resurgent Seb Hopkins. But how resurgent the Porsche driver can be remains to be seen. Again, the LNT team know plenty about this car, but it is a brand new build, so it may still be that they haven't quite perfected the setup yet. It is, however, doing just enough to stay in front. Headlights ablaze on the Toyota, not because it's too dark to see where he's going, but just because Stephen Walton wants to upset, I beg your pardon, not Stephen Walton, because the Toyota driver wants to upset the McLaren in front. It's Craig Wilkins in the Toyota, trying to upset the McLaren and just distract him a little. Anything flickering away in the mirrors that helps to distract the driver, braking or turning into a corner, can be an advantage.
And the McLaren and the Toyota, a familiar sight racing together in GT4 in British GT this year. The Toyota going extremely well, just a one-car team. The McLaren is run by a number of customer teams, so there are a few of those out, but the Toyota's proved itself to be a very, very quick car in British GT, and is trying to make a mark now in this GT4 Classic Silverstone Challenge for this weekend's Classic at Silverstone, as they come through the long right-hander at Club Corner, and we've been told that the track limits warnings are for Copse Corner, not Club Corner, for Seb Hopkins, so that's where he's been deemed to be running too wide. But we're watching another great battle, and this one is for 5th place, and Craig Wilkins going up around the outside, trying to take the wide line. He'll attempt to cut back, but too good is the McLaren of David Foster. And here are the leaders, and it's side by side, and still Freddie Tomlinson leads. That's at Luffield as they go round to start the section that runs through the old Woodcut corner and onto the pit straight. And it's still Freddie Tomlinson, but Martin, you get the feeling that Seb Hopkins is ready to pass him, don't you?
Side by side into the braking area. Hopkins earlier on the brakes as they turn into Copse Corner. He was on the outside line and he worried about Freddie Tomlinson. He runs out wide again. He's carrying too much speed in there. If he runs all 4 wheels outside the white line again, then he will start to pick up penalties. And the problem then is, even if he finishes in front, he may not end up finishing in front. We haven't been notified yet on our timing screens of any penalty. At that, we haven't been notified about anything, even track limit warnings. And again, running out wide there onto the hanger straight from Chapel Curve. Freddie Tomlinson painted on the white line on the drivers inside. He did not want Seb Hopkins coming inside him, wanted to make sure the Porsche driver had to go the long way round the outside. 30 odd seconds remain, another lap to go. More jeopardy for Tomlinson. Hopkins seems to have the quicker car here late in the race.
Indeed, yes, and Freddie Tomlinson managing to keep the white Ginetta within the track limits there. The car just moving across the track, but he didn't run wide. We've seen that situation lose the lead. And then another battle. This is for 5th place, the McLaren versus Toyota battle. Craig Wilkins trying to find a way by David Foster as they go into Club Corner, and they'll turn a long right-hander now, and already Craig Wilkins is trying to think of a way of coming out of Club slightly quicker, so he gets the run up the Hamilton straight. He pulls to the inside of the circuit, then drops back to the outside again, just trying to worry David Foster into a mistake as they come now into Farm, the left-hander. And then will Craig Wilkins go for the outside at Village or the inside? No, he stays behind as they go now on the short straight up to the loop, the left-hander.
This is like yesterday's race. The Toyota seems to be stronger and stronger the longer the race goes on, and yet it's a bigger, higher car. It looks like it'll roll more, should wear its tyres more, should maybe get less competitive as the race goes on. But Craig was like this at the end of the race, really pushing hard. Leaders come past us halfway round the lap, past the old pits, and there is clear air behind Freddie Tomlinson. Well, he ran a little wide, but maybe Seb Hopkins has just had to be a little clearer. David Fresky in 3rd, Alia College closing right in 4th. Tomlinson, though, with a big advantage, the biggest in the race. Seb Hopkins is not going to win this unless there are post-race penalties or a big drama for Freddie Tomlinson. Maybe for the first time, he'll come down the hanger straight on the driver's left on the racing line. Hopkins not able to get there. He had a really big attack in the last couple of laps, but as they come down towards Stowe for the final time, it's Freddie Tomlinson who is the leader, and Seb Hopkins has not got anything left to show the Ginetta driver. Final corners of the race for Freddie Tomlinson. He was the runner-up yesterday from second on the grid. He took the lead right at the beginning of the race. Through the safety car, he held it, restarted superbly, and takes the first win for this car. In second place, behind him, Seb Hopkins, and in third, well, a run to the line from Alia Kolic. Gets through, got ahead of David Tresky, so a change on the last lap, the teammates swapping positions, whether that was intentional or whether Collins just had a run and a run out wide from the McLaren. Another change of position. We didn't have it for the lead, but we had it for third and we've had it for fifth. Craig Wilkins gets through, and behind, look at that, the Cup class battle. It was close, but not enough. The Lotus takes victory. And there is Freddie Tomlinson, as he will have been instructed by his engineers. Pick up as much muck on the tyres as possible. That's why he's running off track. He's running in all the dirt, all the marbles, to make sure that the car weighs as much as possible and is as high as possible. And our race director, well, not our race director, but the race director in the race, the British GT race director, Peter Daly, completes his weekend without any summonses to the clerk of the courses office. He will get 2 big fat ticks and signatures on his licence, so congratulations to him. I'm sure that has helped continue his education as a race official. When you race yourself, it does give you that extra little bit of insight. Well, Freddie Tomlinson claiming victory in the Ginetta, and this might well be the key moment. Watch Seb Hopkins in the orange and black Porsche really trying to get a good drive through Luffield, but it's a little bit less grippy out there in the gravel trap than he would have liked. Keep it on the grey stuff, son, that's what it's there for. So Seb Hopkins just pushing with everything he had. Well, better to go down in a, I was going to say blaze of glory, but in a cloud of gravel trap dust than not to have tried at all. He gave it everything, didn't quite have enough. Craig Wilkins with a little bit of smoke coming from the back of the Toyota. And they had a good race in the end. As long as not too much more smoke comes out, then they will be happy to deal with that when he gets back in. But it is actually starting to smoke quite a lot. So luckily the race has ended, and hopefully he's not dropping oil all the way back to the pit lane. Well, that turned into a very dramatic last few moments as well. This, again, I said this earlier, is it actually a legal requirement that we have major last lap dramas? Because there were some major last lap dramas in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great racing. The lead battle carried on right the way around to Luffield on the last lap, we now know, because we've seen that gravel trap moment. But up to that point, very, very good indeed from Freddie Tomlinson and Seb Hopkins.
Yeah, cracking battle for the lead. And David Tresky and Alia Kolic grabbing third place. I wonder if that was a gift from the team, that they swapped positions, or whether David Tresky had a problem, but whatever. Alia Kolic caught him on the final lap and dived through for a podium finish. So 2 of the 3 Bagheera Mercedes drivers finishing in the top 3 in the 2 races. Well, let's take a look at the results then of our race. Second and final encounter for the Masters GT4 Classic in the Silverstone Challenge. Freddie Tomlinson today taking victory over yesterday's winner Seb Hopkins, so a win and a second apiece. Alia Kolic in third, ahead of David Tresky in fourth, so a third and a fourth apiece for the Mercedes drivers. Craig Wilkins finishing in fifth place, getting ahead of David Foster in the final corner of the race. John Dixon in sixth, ahead of Stephen Walton and Greg Evans, and John Dixon winning the Cup class in his Lotus. Chris Griffin, the top classic car, in 10th place in his Aston. Safety car to rescue the cars of Danny Henry and Chris Murphy, both of whom were fortunately A-OK after their incidents. We expected to see the front runners from race 1 producing the pace at the front again in race 2 for the GT4s, and Seb Hopkins and Freddie Tomlinson did exactly that. A high-speed off for the McLaren driver Danny Henry was one of the incidents that brought out the safety car, and when we went back to green flag racing, early race leader Freddie Tomlinson came under real pressure from day 1 winner Seb Hopkins, but the Ginetta driver held his nerve and his line and his position. In the Cup class, it was the Lotus Evora of John Dickinson who had the advantage, his closest rival getting held up, and in the end Freddie Tomlinson and Seb Hopkins' battle was decided by a gravel trapping moment from the Porsche driver, and it was the Ginetta that claimed the win.